Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Harrisburg.
Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see you all.
I suppose anybody else that has their mic unmuted, you can say it's so nice to see everybody as well.
And we can read your lips.
Good afternoon.
Yeah,
Nice
there
to
you
Hi,
go.
Vlad.
Thank you, John. Adeline,
Hello, Norma.
you should just like randomly unmute somebody like Karen Paris, for example, and then Karen could just say hi to everybody. We are counting down. We have like 34 seconds until noon. So, we'll virtually shake hands or, okay, never mind. It's noon. It's noon. We're going to get this show on the road. I see a few people going, I can't believe he is the president of our club. Well, happy Monday. It is March already. Can you believe that? March already? I heard birds chirping this weekend, and one of those little birds told me that if March comes in like a lion, it goes out like a Rotarian. Okay, just, show of hands, funny, yes, where does it rank? Okay, never mind. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Harrisburg weekly meeting. On a serious note, I learned over the weekend of the death, really, of our friend and fellow Rotarian, Ron Gus. And so I would like to ask us to let's take a moment of silence, and if we could, and remember Ron. Thank you. Thank you. We'll open our meeting today with an invocation by Karen Good.
Let's all pause for prayer. Dear God, thank you for the life of Ron Gus. He was important to so many, and we will miss him. Please hold his family in your hand as they grieve. Thank you for the blessing of a new day and a new month. As you are awakening the world from its winter sleep, awaken us also to be more loving, more generous, more thoughtful. Guide and protect us as we use the gifts you have given us in the work that we do, both in this world and as Rotarians. Bless this meeting and our time together. Amen.
And thank you, Karen. Well, join me, if you could, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Rotary four-way test of all the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Second, is it
Is
fair
it
to
fair
all
to all
concerned?
concerned?
Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Let's keep that Rotary four-way test front and center, right, as we go through our weeks. Well, I have, I really was tempted to say I have 9 announcements for you today. We've gotten so used to three quick announcements, but I decided to square it today, 3 times 3. Seriously, no, we have a virtual coffee hour again tomorrow morning at 8:30. To be a part of a virtual coffee hour or virtual happy hour, you need to register. So make sure you go to the events calendar to register or click on the link in your Rotary Roundup, which we all read, right? I mean, it goes right to your email inbox every Friday. So there's a link there in the Rotary Roundup as well. Tomorrow morning from 8:30 to 9:30. Today's lunch money is being donated to the Shalom House. Now, if lunches are not included in your dues, or if you'd like to make an additional donation, just head on out to www.shalomhouse.net and click on the Donate Now button. You'll see a website that looks like this, just minus the fancy arrows. We are looking for volunteers for Saturday, March 6th for the Ice in the Berg event. Now, I want you to take a look at that picture. There are 5 Rotarians gathered around that ice sculpture. Don't they look like they're having fun? Right? That was last year, and it was a little chilly, but that's what ice is all about. So visit the events calendar again, click on the link to get signed up for the Ice in the Berg event. And we are looking for volunteers for the overnight shelter as well. So contact Steve Swartz there. His contact information is listed on the slide if you have any questions about that. Event dates are today, March 1st, March 8th, March 15th, and March 29th. So, a great big thank you to everyone. I so appreciate every single one of you. It's great to know you as friends and fellow Rotarians. And, every time that you sign up to be a part of an event, every time you are part of a committee, every time you make a donation, whether you're in a meeting or just lending a helping hand, you are making such an amazing difference in the world. You're opening opportunities for other people and for our community as well. So thank you to everyone for being a special part of our Rotary Club of Harrisburg. And a great big thank you to our corporate members for your ongoing support. Now, today we continue our Meet the Board Member series.
Wow, after that, that's a tough act to follow. Yes, I am Larry Dittman, a current board member, and I really support James' initiative in introducing the board members. We're here to be used, abused, if you will. We do all the business for the organization, and the more input we get from everyone, the better we can perform our job. So I encourage all of you to either come to a board meeting or talk to a board member about any concerns you have, and I guarantee you we'll bring it up and discuss it and give you feedback in the process. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all of you, all 64 of you that are on Zoom today, for attending this event. I know we've had an awful significant year affect us, and it's been a real challenge. And thanks to technology and some strong-willed people, we've been able to pull this off without a hitch. And as you know, socialization is a big component of our Rotary and is a large part of a Rotarian family. So I think all of us miss the days when we could sit and talk to each other face to face, then enjoy a lunch while we did our Rotary business. I certainly do. I bring this up because COVID tried to destroy all that. And it easily could have if we had not stuck together through this pandemic. For many of us, and maybe even most of us, sitting in front of the PC every Monday at noon is not my definition of socializing. I don't like it, and I can't wait until we're back to the Hilton. I hope all of you feel that way. In fact, Dr. Fauci this morning said on TV that if 2 people have their 2 doses of shots, masks aren't necessary. So with that statement, I encourage all of you, if you haven't gotten all your shots, please do. And I know it's a challenge to even get your shots, but do what you can, because the quicker we all get it done, the better off we're going to be in getting back to the socialization of this club. That is so vital for all of us. As nice as this has been, I know it can be a lot better. Currently, a little bit about myself. I'm the CEO of ExecuStar and have been for the past 10 years. Interesting, it's a school. It's a 501c3 school, and our focus is on CEOs, presidents, or founders of small business. Now, in our mind, the definition of a small business is a company that's between $1 million and $50 million. We also are partnered with Penn State and have classes that include about 15 to 20 people. And the idea is, in this year-long program, is if your company's in trouble, not broken, but in trouble, you're barely profitable, or you're break even, or you're not growing at your current market rate, we can help you. We do everything from soup to nuts. We take struggling companies. We go through an entire year-long process where we talk about focus on planning, implementation, sales, marketing, leadership, and growth analysis. We do it openly and we do it interactively. So at the end of that year, you are in a much better position to take better management of your company. And we've had great success with it. We've now had over 125 CEOs graduate from this program, and they keep coming back. So we must be doing something right. Well, my career started in electrical engineering after graduating from Penn State. I joined in the corporate world here in Harrisburg, eventually rose to a corporate executive living in mainland China. My wife and I spent months to learn how to speak Chinese. I had been going back and forth to China for a year, doing all my chores over there. And finally, my wife moved over, and we had a house in Shanghai, China. It was kind of interesting because about a week or so after we moved into our house, our company was taken over by corporate raids. So all the officers of the company were dismissed. So that ended my 3-year stint in China. But we met a lot of nice people in the year that we were over there. My Chinese isn't as good as it used to be, but I can still order Chinese food in a restaurant. I also, after that stint, that was in almost 2000, year 2000, I went into the startup world. I have since then done 8 startups where I either founded or co-founded. And previous to the ExecuStar one, which was my last company, I spent 8 years in Silicon Valley doing a high-tech startup out there, which has turned out to be very successful, and will be going IPO next year. So I feel really good about that. And I never dreamed that I would end up being an educator. That's kind of interesting because my father was actually an educator. He was a superintendent of a school system here in the area. My mother was just the opposite. She was an artist. So I've had an interesting family background. My brother's a golf pro, and I ended up an engineer. So I guess it all worked out, and certainly enjoy living here now. I've been a member of this Rotary for 4 years, as of January, actually, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. I joined the board about 1.5 years ago, and I go off in June, and I'm very thankful for the experience, and I can't wait to encourage people to actually either take a position on the board or work with the board it's just an amazing group of people who discuss everything, enjoy what they're doing, and do everything for the betterment of the organization. So I'm really proud to have been part of this. It's a shame that COVID has destroyed a lot of our interactions and that socialization that I think is so very vital. My focus on the board has principally been in membership growth. I'm a member of the membership committee, and we have two magnificent co-chairs, Amy Kunis and Angela Tatum. And we work our fannies off trying to build this organization to even greater numbers than it is now. We have goals in place, and that's one of the reasons why we need to get back into the socialization. It's a lot easier to recruit when you're face to face. It's tough in Zoom. Zoom has a lot of features, but till they get smellorama and feelorama and all the things that we need in that face to face environment, it's going to be a challenge without it. But one thing I would like to do is appeal to all of you to help us grow this organization. As members of this Rotary, literally have an obligation to always recruit whenever we can. I mean, we almost have to be disciples about it because we can't let this fail. It does so much good work for our community. And I encourage all of you to continue to support this organization through recruitment, through your own work, and life will really be good for all of us. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to James because I know we have a magnificent agenda today, and Chris is going to chair a really neat idea of this for education. As being an educator, I really look forward to this. So thank you all, and good luck with the roundtable.
Thank you so much, Larry. Let's give a hand to Larry Dittman. Larry is, as we said, a board member. And wasn't that fun? I mean, doesn't it look like we are having fun here today? So, but you know, if you'd like to talk to Larry about that, you just reach out to him. Speaking of board members, well, one thing before I say, speaking of board members, you know, Matt Staub is also going down this leadership track, and leadership in Rotary is just so much fun. So if you want to get in that track, reach out to me, reach out to Matt Staub or Adeline, and we'll make sure that you get nominated, you know, in time. So, but speaking of board members, Chris Baldridge is also a board member of our club, and he, when he's not being a board member, he is the executive director of the Harrisburg Public Schools Foundation. And today, Chris is going to talk to us about our continued support of displaced students in the Harrisburg School District. Chris?
Thank you, James, and hello, everyone. I have the privilege of being the executive director of the Harrisburg Public Schools Foundation. And for the last few years, the Rotary Foundation has been very generous and supportive through the use of the beloved pancake breakfast, which unfortunately this year is still not happening. But every year, the Rotary Foundation is able to provide a very nice donation to Harrisburg Public Schools to help with the homeless initiative. So today we're very honored to present the school district with a check for $15,000. And I think, oh, there it is. If we were in person, we'd make a big check and give it right to Chris and his team. But on behalf of the Rotary and also on behalf of the Harrisburg Public Schools Foundation, we're very honored to present this donation for students and to help the Homeland Initiative. So I don't know if Chris Summer, if you want to say a few words, or I see Dr. Samuels is here too, the Chief Recovery Officer. So welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Baldridge. I'll turn it over to Dr. Samuels, and then when she finishes, I'll just have a few other comments to make. Dr. Samuels, our coin-appointed receiver for the Harrisburg School District.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. I can only say that the Rotary Club of Harrisburg is the epitome of service and support. And on behalf of our students, thank you so very much. What an incredible difference you are making for students in the Harrisburg School District. We are certainly grateful for all of your support and want you to know that this will have a life-changing impact on so many students. So thank you so very much for everything. Thank you for this generous donation.
Thank you, Dr. Samuels.
Mr. Samuels.
I concur with your comments, Dr. Samuels, and again, on behalf of the Harrisburg School District. Since Dr. Samuels and I have arrived to Harrisburg to do this work under receivership, the Rotary has been nothing but supportive every turn of this journey. And it is just so appreciative, and we want to make sure that it doesn't go unnoticed with everyone on this call today. There's a few individuals I do want to mention quickly that are on this meeting today. Our board president, Mr. Jim Thompson, is on today with us, as well as two key individuals that are really the connectivity between our students and the school district, and that's Miss Mary Ann Peters and Miss Sandra James Goodrum. So they deserve a phenomenal applause and credit for all their hard work day to day, working with our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Sue Sneath, who you'll get to meet in a little bit. They just do great work for our students in the Harrisburg School District. So again, we are so appreciative and so thankful to the Rotary and Mr. Baldridge and the entire team for your continued support.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dr. Samuels, Chris, yes, it's and also, you know, Mr. Jim Thompson. Again, thank you to everyone for all you're doing. And Chris Baldridge, do you have just a couple comments before we wrap that segment?
Just also want to just thank the Rotary Foundation for all the support of Harrisburg, and I know the funds are used to help with displaced students and homeless initiatives, a lot of great programs. So I think it's great that Harrisburg Rotary Club invests so much time and energy into helping the students of Harrisburg. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Well, I'll tell you what, sometimes you meet folks that you just, the more you get to know them, the more you realize they bring such a level of organization and passion to what they do. And John Moorfield is one of those folks. He does a wonderful job in our program committee. And I'm going to turn the meeting over today to John to introduce today's program.
Well, thanks, James. And great to hear from all within the Harrisburg School District. 1 year ago today, nearly to the day, Governor Wolf shut down schools across the state. And in facing this challenge and the experience of educating students throughout the Harrisburg City School District, Dr. Susan Smeath, who's the academic director, wondered how the city school district was going to rise to this challenge. You see, many of the students within the Harrisburg City School District have no access to the internet. And if they did, it was through their cell phones with a limited data plan. As the school's academic director, the task to Susan seemed nearly impossible. She recalled a conversation that had taken place a few days before with WITF's CEO, Ron Hetrick, and reached out questioning the possibilities. From that point, a surprising collaboration grew to include 7 regional school districts, which Dr. Sneath and WITF's Director of Education, Debbie Reek, will explain. By the fall, the collaboration had reached 28 school districts across the state and all of the public media venues through the state. Currently, the collaboration is a multi-state effort. Today's meeting is a panel discussion moderated by our very own Chris Baldridge, as you've gotten to know. And after serving as principal within the Cumberland Valley School District, he joined as the executive director of the Harrisburg City Schools Foundation. As you consider Dr. Sneath's and Ms. Reek's comments, and presentation, please forward your questions directly through the chat session to our club president, James Good. James will organize these questions and order them for Chris's moderation. Perhaps some of your questions may further help propel this great collaboration effort further. While some of them have been introduced previously, certainly within the school district, I am greatly honored to have Dr. Samuels, Dr. Selmer, and my good friend James Thompson, president of the school board, join the meeting. I also want to welcome Travis Waters, who's the superintendent of Steelton High Spire School District, and Diane Best, superintendent of the Williams Valley School District. I finally want to welcome Ron Hetrick, the CEO, president and CEO of WITF, who's joined this presentation as well. Out of a tremendous amount of respect for all Susan Sneath and certainly Debbie have accomplished, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Susan Sneath.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm very flattered to be here today. Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to see so many community partners on this call, as well as one of our most recent former graduates, Ms. Kennedy, is on the call too. So I'm thrilled to be here today. I feel very encompassed by support. So Mr. Moorfield said it exactly right. A year ago, about today, almost exactly a year ago, a decree was made and all schools in the state were closed. I recall being in our office the week right afterwards with Mr. Selmer, our acting superintendent, kind of just shaking my head, trying to figure out what we were going to possibly do to ensure that our students in Harrisburg had access to any form of education. And it's just by chance, the week prior, I had been at a CAIU meeting where Mr. Ron Hetrick was presenting about WITF and all of the educational programming that had been updated recently. While I was sitting there with Mr. Selmer, there was a few things that I was thinking about. Number one, I was thinking, how many of our students have internet? How many of our students have devices that they can use? How many of our students will know how to log in and connect even if they have those devices? And my thoughts kept kind of churning around in that way. So what we started out with is we really just started out with a huge effort among the school district to call every family in the school district, which is a huge undertaking. There were 7,000 students in the school district, and we asked all of our teachers to call their classroom of students, or they're at the secondary, they have advisory period. We asked them to contact their advisory period, and we asked them a series of questions about their connectivity, all kinds of questions, and all of the colleagues in Harrisburg entered that data into one form so that we could really figure out where we stood and what needed to happen next. So at the time in March last year, we had one device per every 5 children in the school district. According to the initial surveys, these calling surveys, we contacted 67%, or we made contact with 67% of our students through those phone calls. 66.4% of our families reported that they had a device, a computer, or a tablet of some kind. 86.5% of our families reported to having access to stable internet, which included phone hotspots and things like that. And 95.1% of our students reporting having access to television and cable. And the reason why we asked that question kind of relates back to my years as a school counselor in Philadelphia and also in the Lancaster area. And I used to, at Thanksgiving time, I would go out to homes and deliver items for Thanksgiving dinner to our most impoverished families. And one thing that I remember that just kind of struck me was that every home that I went to, they had a television. And usually the television was the biggest thing in the room. It was the gathering area. And in essence, it was the window to the world for those families. And that's remained true from what I can see for the most part. And 95.1% of our families indicated that to be true. Knowing this is how we began the process of considering other ways other than the internet to possibly have access to learning for our children. So I see here on the slide, it says inequity between school districts became very clear. What I mean by that is in most school districts, or in many school districts, not most, but many, one-to-one devices for learning is already an implemented practice. In Harrisburg, when you only have one device for every 5 children, we were pretty far away from that one-to-one device initiative. Even though Mr. Selmer and I talked a lot about making sure that we moved toward one-to-one devices, we also knew that we needed a short-term solution, which kind of led us to give a call to Mr. Hetrick at WITF, and we asked for a meeting. And I don't think that we even shared, Deb, you might want to jump in. I don't remember if we even shared what the meeting was about at that point.
I think you said, we have this idea and we need to talk to you about it.
It was a very kind of, yeah, it was like, we have this idea, we need to talk with you about it. And basically the idea was that because we didn't know if we had immediate access to students, one thing that we didn't want to stop was the continuity of education. And who better to go to than the researched and tried and true best educational programming that we know, which is all occurs through WITF. So what we did was we called and we had a meeting. We met Debbie at that point. Ron was there, Kara was there, and Fred was there. And we talked about this concept of collaborating with us so that I could share the big ideas in the areas of math, social studies, science, and reading or English language arts that had not yet been taught for each grade level across the school district. And my idea was to see if they had programming that would match and provide exposure to those big idea areas that our children were going to be missing. So we started in that way. And so Deb, what was your reaction?
Well, we thought it was a wonderful concept. And initially we were trying to figure out what that workload would look like. And as we spent time thinking, it made a lot of sense because PBS programming in general is so unique for children. It's really the only content that is available that starts with educational goals and takes those goals and makes them really fun for children to watch and grown-ups to watch, where a lot of other programming says, okay, let's be fun, and then we'll figure out a way to try to tie it into education in some way. And so because PBS content is so rich to start with, being able to go through that content and look at these big ideas, which inevitably turned out to be very similar big ideas to what other school districts were focusing on as well. It made a lot of sense. And we called them big ideas because we knew that it wasn't just going to be teachers who were going to be interacting with this form, this document, however we were able to get it out to families, that it was going to be families too, and that objectives and goals and concepts can sound a little intimidating, but everybody gets big ideas. These are the things we're trying to do. And it really made a lot of sense.
Thank you. Mr. Selmer, do you have anything to add? You were there for all of the beginning parts.
No, it was certainly, I just think the speed in which it happened when you look back on it, just shows the commitment of the partnership and WITF. They absolutely did not hesitate after that first call. And I can share, Dr. Sneath and Debbie, they were working literally over the weekend around the clock because we needed such a quick turnaround to be able to offer this continuity for our students, given what Dr. Sneath shared about our device, 1 to 5 device situation. So as I reflect and listen to this, it's like so much has happened in a year, but what an impressive turnaround from Dr. Sneath and WITF to make this come to fruition.
Thank you. So you can see here, this is the way we communicated. I provided the big ideas and all of the core subject areas. And let's be very clear. I knew that this kind of educational approach would not substitute for the interactivity of teacher-student relationships. However, when we're talking about a global crisis, in my opinion, it was really important to provide that exposure. Another step that we took too, where Mr. Baldridge will remember this, I requested that journals got sent home to all of our families, and the foundation donated those journals that we mailed to every one of our students so that when they watched specific programming, they could write and reflect or draw pictures about that learning. So the whole idea about teaching and learning is exposure and then connecting that new learning to what you already know. And that was our intent in the very beginning stages. So you see here, this was the kind of document that would go back and forth. And then eventually WITF made it much nicer, and they made it into beautiful, almost menus that went out with our food distribution throughout the city. We also had all of these menus posted as well to the school district website, connected through social media, streamed in every possible way through YouTube and Facebook Live. We just wanted to make sure that there was communication and access. Debbie?
Yeah, and what was interesting is we started thinking about the littlest learners, right? Which is sort of the PBS Kids sweet spot of learning. And then the more we spent time with our own content, which was pretty exciting, we were able to see that we had connections across all age groups. Programming that occurs during our general audience programming in the evenings, Nova, nature, documentaries, both things we had produced at WITF and national content. We were able to connect to almost every subject area from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. And we even took our NPR programming because WITF is both PBS and NPR. And look at you, we're on the same page. And we were able to look at that radio programming and color coded by content the same way. So perhaps if your child was learning about some sort of engineering, maybe we didn't have content on TV that week, but we had some sort of Science Friday conversation on NPR where there was content available tied to that topic. And I think that was the part, I mean, my own understanding, like what I do almost always on a daily basis is working with younger children. And so I think for me, what was exciting and eye-opening was really the grown-up programs, the things that that we know that adults who watch our programming find entertaining, and going through that programming and looking at the content ties there was, it was a relief because I was worried. I was worried what we were going to do for those older learners, but it was just such a wonderful thing. And in the front end, didn't require us to do a lot differently. It was really just showing people what was available and making it easy for them to understand how it fit in with their learner.
I remember one perfect example of this where our 6th through 8th grade students in the 4th quarter would have had exposure to the concept of forces of motion in science. And I spent a lot of time going through all of the NOVA, just the sort of the archive NOVA programs, and WITF fit that program when I found it into the menu. So that, I mean, I don't think it was very easy. I just think that we were all very committed to making those connections. So we continued working together throughout the spring into the summer. WITF provided learning resources that were distributed to children. I remember crayons, and I can't remember everything, just little packets that kids could use learning materials to learn at home. We added these menus to, this is a picture of our website that's still in place right now, of our partnership with WITF. We translated it into Spanish. We directed our families to the Spanish versions of PBS learning as well. And the last thing that I can recall is that we were very concerned about our most profoundly disabled children who might be 16 years old, but are learning skills that much younger children would be learning. And we also wanted to make connections for the families of those children to make sure that we are keeping their communication skills up, to keep them stimulated. So there were a lot of discussions about making connections between those kind of TV programs and our special education students as well. Deb?
Yeah, and so one thing I will say is the team of people at WITF are problem solvers, very creative, and really wanting to see where we can support the community. And so Sue and I had Dr. Sneath and I had lots of conversations about, okay, so do your students have learning materials at home? Because it was like layers of revelation, right? Like, oh, we would like them to do this activity. Okay, what do they need at home to do that activity, and how can we provide it? And we were able to pivot, and just like, you know what, frankly, organizations all over the country, right? Trying to figure out how to serve the communities where we live and work by enabling people to get what they need to do the things that they need to do. So other school districts began to hear about this idea, and we had numerous conversations with a variety of school districts that superintendents were like, okay, so how does this work, and you know, how can we use this? And so they were sharing sort of what their big ideas were in their districts too. And what we found is there was just a lot of symmetry to what other school districts needed and what was happening in Harrisburg as well. And so we were able to coordinate those schedules for 7 school districts regularly through the very first part of the pandemic, and then share that idea with all of our partner stations. There's 7 Pennsylvania public media stations, and we were able to share those ideas, which eventually led to a really vibrant connection to the Department of Education and the ability to share some of what we do across all of Pennsylvania. So what school districts have access to and families have access to now looks a lot different than our initial big idea chart where we were highlighting and trying to fill things in. I wish I had kept the original documents that I was like penciling and circling and drawing lines to. Now what we're able to do, and what we do each and every month and week, is a series of activities for both kindergarten readiness. It's sort of the document that appears on the left, and elementary age students, where we take and feature a program that is on television during that week. We coordinate it to standard. We help group it by content focus, and we create an activity that families or teachers could pull and use every single week in a variety of content areas. The colors that you see are grid, it's a grid to content area, so that folks are able to sort of group and look at materials that way. We also, along with the other PBS stations, create a large grid that does the same thing sort of that we did in our initial little form, but also coordinates to a resource called PBS Learning Media, which is a resource from National PBS, which basically gathers all the resources of PBS stations across the country to group into activities, to lesson plans, to individualized state standards. And each one of the programs now has a link that families or teachers can click on and pull up a wide variety of activities, extensions, things they can do at home or in school. We were able, I'm looking at the chat questions, all of these resources are now available in English and Spanish. And we find that to be just a really a significant thing that we're able to do. And what we're hearing from partners all across the state is that these resources, which can be also printed as a PDF, included in lunch pickups that are still happening for hybrid and at-home learners, and that those things are easily available for families and for teachers and school districts. It's an interesting process, sort of, to kind of go back and think about sort of where it's the timeliness of it for me, the almost the anniversary of it, that is strange and also pretty incredible, that we were glad to be brought to the table, and we were so pleased that we were able to deliver content that made a lot of sense for Harrisburg and for our whole state.
Mr. Selmer, do you have anything to add?
I just want to add, with the WITF partnership, something else that then blossomed quickly in the Harrisburg School District was then a partnership with the city of Harrisburg, where essentially we took over Channel 20 from the middle of April through beginning of June, where we then also broadcasted live lessons or recorded lessons given by Harrisburg School District teachers. So this partnership with WITF also had us thinking, well, what else can we do beyond all of this work? And it quickly led to then that partnership. So I really credit the WITF partnership, and just the collaboration and the problem solving and the whole process we went through led us to then foster, gave us the ability to foster other ideas that we were able to quickly pivot and implement to support our students and families during, obviously, this extremely difficult time that we were under last March. The other piece that happened, though, that would made this possible was legislatively, everything was waived. So from March to June, in education, you usually don't have what I'll call a green light to be able to pivot so quickly and come up with programming and supports for students. But because of that was called Act 13 legislation, it really opened up the door for us to be able to pivot, think outside the box, come up with ideas that we think would work, while at the same time trying to build infrastructure for what would be the upcoming school year, while continuing this partnership. So there were many things happening simultaneously that, when you look back, really created this opportunity in such a difficult and uncertain time to still support our families in the Harrisburg School District.
And just to close, we are very thankful to our friendship and our partnership with WITF. We continue to direct families to that educational program. We directed families all summer long, and we continue to meet now and then as they continue to develop their interactive programming and their educational programming. I'm so thankful to them that I'll do anything I possibly can so that they can continue evolving as the best in educational television. So thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Let's give it up for the folks on the panel and the team. This is just such an exciting story. It is so good to hear about the collaboration and educational television really coming together. I think each one of you is probably a Rotarian at heart. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you agree? We do have a few questions in queue, and Dr. Sneath, do I pose those questions to you, and then you kind of hand it out from
Sure.
there?
I don't see the questions, but sure, anything.
Right. Okay. Now my chat just moved to a different part of my computer, so let me find that for a second here. Yeah. So can anyone talk about maybe how many students were impacted both within the Harrisburg School District and other school districts? And how do you envision going forward, let's say as maybe the pandemic closes and we get things back to normal?
I can start there. We kept analytics in our school district. We were averaging 4,000 views per day of between our Facebook Live, our YouTube, and our government channel. We had put out a schedule of what time teachers would be broadcasting, and we were monitoring those numbers until the end of August, actually, because we just repeated what we had done from April to June in July and August as well. So we kept a finger on the pulse of what was happening there. And I forget the second part of your question. What?
How you envision going forward?
So, I mean, I think the key is that Harrisburg School District, like Mr. Selmer said, we did pivot, and we are now one-to-one device, which took a great deal. I mean, that's just a whole other monkey that we were having a very difficult time make happen. But we were able to move in that direction. And now through our remote learning options, we still continue to push out supplemental educational television for teachers to use when they're working with students. And they've been doing that throughout the school year.
Yeah, and I can share that as we move forward, what started in Harrisburg and continues to grow throughout the state. We are looking at connectivity issues for students, not just in Harrisburg, but across the Commonwealth, and trying to, at WITF, trying to create solutions with our partners that involve really creative ways. If you could unmute Ron Hetrick, I'm sure he could tell you way more about the technology behind it. But related to data casting and using a variety of ways to help students be able to connect in areas where connection has been very, very challenging for them. We think a lot about learning loss. We think a lot about social and emotional learning for students, which I think teachers and districts talk right now are very focused on learning loss, which is important. But equally, we need to be focusing on the mental health of students, both little ones who should have been learning what it's like to when someone takes your seat or your steps in front of you in line, and older students who I have twins who are 16 in a week, and a 19-year-old freshman at Bloomsburg who's learning at home, who I know I love having them so close, but they also developmentally need to not be so close, right? They need to be experiencing those things. So Ron, I don't know if you want to speak just briefly to that question too.
And thank you so much for having us today, and to Dr. Sneath and Mr. Selmer. We're so proud to have worked with you, and I really been inspired by you to help create something that's been used across the Commonwealth, and as Debbie alluded to, across the country at this point. So while aligning our programs was just the beginning to these state standards and these big ideas, the power of public television in terms of being a conduit to the most disconnected persons across the country is a really powerful force. And that, much like Debbie said, we're able to use our television signal to send computer files to anybody who can receive our signal. So instead of receiving programs, we're actually able to send PDFs, video files, you name it. We can send those files to those people. So across the state of Pennsylvania right now, and in partnership with 12 other states, we're actually helping to put this service online so that in the most rural parts of the country, even after the pandemic ends, we'll be able to help bridge that digital divide. So that homework gap that exists, kids who didn't have access to these digital resources prior to the pandemic, this pandemic has shown a light on those inequities. So we'll be able to help bridge that gap in the future. And again, these ideas and this ideation started with how we reimagined learning here in the Harrisburg City School District.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And the questions are, kind of rolling in. And it feels a little funny here because I know Chris Baldridge is the moderator and all the questions are coming into me in private messaging. So, that's kind of a little, one of those little, Zoom things that happens there. But talk about the biggest challenges. We've got about 6 minutes left here, not quite. Talk a little bit about the biggest challenges, both maybe two that have come through here. One, making sure that the kids are proficient to moving on to the next grade, and then secondly, maybe the biggest challenge in operationalizing, if you will, the idea into action in the school district.
I think I can speak to that. I know Mr. Selmer will be able to also look at it from his vantage point as well. Our biggest concern is the limited connectivity of some of our children to their education at this point. We want to make sure, we want to educate 100% of our students in Harrisburg School District. In some cases, this pandemic has been just a travesty for certain families, and staying connected to the children of those families has been a big struggle. We have on the ground teams of people going house to house. We've given out hotspots and brought new computers and all of those things to make sure that we've provided the opportunity for 100% of our families to have contact with their education. It's been quite an undertaking. I think that's probably my biggest concern. One of my biggest, one of the biggest pluses that I've seen is simply the development and the evolution of our teachers in teaching in an online setting. They are amazing. It's amazing. So when people say things like the school is closed, Harrisburg School District is not closed. It has not been closed. It is absolutely open, but we are teaching in a remote setting. And I just spent a whole morning last Friday going into the classrooms of new teachers, and I'm just amazed every time I go in there. There's actively involved children, very creatively connecting adults. I see relationships between students and children. So I see so many good things. It still doesn't replace interactive in-person instruction. I will say that. It doesn't replace that. But it is one great substitute. So we're pretty excited to see that.
And I would just add to that, what this has produced, though, is post-COVID, public education is never going to look as the same as it did last March. And what this has provided us an opportunity, because when we say 1 to 5, to provide some context, that means we had almost 5,000 students that did not have devices. And in 4.5 months, we closed that gap to start this current school year, including internet connectivity. And so the formula moving forward will be what our teachers have learned and how they can deliver instruction online will help us create what will be a menu of options for our families on how they want to learn moving forward. And the other piece I would just say, and Dr. Steve touched on it, we incorporated what I'll quote unquote a significant ground game this entire year, where we have had teams out knocking on doors. If students have not been logged on for more than 2 days, we were going out to the house. There has been significant effort. I applaud the Harrisburg School District team, our teachers, our counselors, our social workers, that even during the middle of a pandemic, they were still willing to go out for the betterment of our students to make sure they were okay and that they were connected. So do we have gaps? Absolutely. Every school district in this state does. given this pandemic. And it doesn't matter how affluent that you are or aren't. There have been challenges, but the Harrisburg School District and the team on the ground has really risen to do everything humanly possible to support our students and families during this difficult time. And I do believe and feel in my heart, we are going to be a stronger school district. This pandemic has been difficult, but there are things and there are gifts from this pandemic that we are going to take forward as far as our education and our instructional delivery as a school district.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much again. And, you know, that was a great way of wrapping, you know, and putting putting a bow on it, actually. And again, just, you know, thank you so much to every single one of you guys. What a heartwarming story. I think it's just exciting to see people working together and rising to the challenge. And a great big thank you again to our program committee for putting together, you know, another good one here today. Next week, March 8th, we will be right back here doing it again, this time hearing from Brandon Flood, the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons. So we've got a great Rotary program coming up again next week. Make it a great Rotary week this week, and we'll talk to you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.